Being able to cultivate the whole forgiveness angle, which I think is one of the topics that I said we do today. Yeah, forgiveness. That's good. Is the ability to cultivate forgiveness, because so much of our pain in the context of things that we generally avoid in our lives, or things that cause us difficulty in the way that we deal and operate within our own emotional structure, generally relates to past aggressions. So somebody who has caused us harm in the past, or where we've actually caused ourselves harm. So, you know, we've been unable to forgive ourselves for certain types of things or actions that may have happened in the past. And I suppose, you know, a great example of that for me would be when we lost our son Joshua. For a few years after his death, I couldn't really forgive myself for making certain decisions around, you know, going on a holiday where Joshua was arrived prematurely. And it's highly illogical, but if we don't actually really step into those negative vibes and those negative voices and those negative feelings that we push upon ourselves, and if we don't really understand where the pain is, then we don't get a release. You know, we don't get a letting go. So the letting go is the letting go of the shoulders and the tension, but the letting go is also all of the things that create the tightness and tension that we hold on to so much within our bodies. And somebody shared today on one of the messages, she'd been holding onto this for 25 years, and she'd only just started to notice in the last 21 days that there was a capacity to actually start to just slowly let things out. And if you think about the human body as, you know, something that we suppress. So every time we have a negative encounter within our lives, what we often do is, you know, it's almost like we have a jar and we open the jar and we throw in this new or latest piece of negativity that's happened in our life. And then we kind of close the jar and push it down. And then we move through life, and then something else comes along and to open the jar and force the next thing down and screw it down, and so on and so forth. But the challenge is that the more we try and force into the jar, eventually, you know, the lid is nearly ready to pop off. So we have to try and think, well, how do we make more space? And I don't know if I've used this analogy before, but this is what I always talk about when I'm working with people, is that if you come into life as a newborn, you have an empty bottle. There's no stress, there's no tension, there's no anxiety in your life. And as you move through life, your bottle starts to fill up because you have all the trials and tribulations of life and teenage years and school and your work, etc. And many people might actually make it to, you know, their 90s, and here they are, and the water level is here, and there's quite a gap here. So what's being forced down within their bottle has not been to the point where it's caused too much of a disturbance. But where we start to feel anxiety, tension, stress, where we start to have that kind of continuous negative loop and negative emotions, is when the water level has almost come to the top. And when the water level is almost coming to the top, what often happens is it's like sloshing around at the top. The water level is overflowing. And that overflowing feeling, when it comes with anxiety, it really manifests itself in a great sense of an indecisive way of being. I can't really make the right decisions. I don't know whether I should go right or left or up or down. Should I take this job? Should I not take this job? Is this relationship right? So we've actually got to the point where we're quite full up. And what we look to do, so in in therapy, we're looking at, looking into the bottle and effectively finding some of the stones that have caused the water to rise quicker. We take them out, we let go of them, and the water starts to come down. And in meditation, it's very similar. So we're starting to notice things that may have happened in our lives, or people who have caused us harm. And as we notice them, we notice, yeah, I noticed that person. I noticed that was a real issue. And I used the analogy before, I think in one of the meditations, that you kind of end up holding a grudge or your anger towards somebody. It's like as if we're holding this two-headed spear. So the one head is at the top, and we're desperately trying to, tackle a person like, "Ugh, how dare you do that to me? So hurtful." And we think that they notice, but actually they've kind of gone off and got on with their life. But every time we push forward and we pull back, we actually just self-inflict wounds constantly. So we're left carrying pain. We're left with the issues that mean our water bottle is full. So can we, in essence, start to decrease the level of water in our lives? Can we actually start to do work on ourselves to reduce this level? For many people, it's a real challenge. But for anybody who's got through 21 days, it really is possible. Because I think without exception, and you can tell me differently, but certainly from the private emails and the comments on the pages, everybody at some point through this process has met a dark side, a demon, an issue in their past, an unresolved moment. Many of you have spoken about, being quite overwhelmed by emotion at times, and often, it's times where we're kind of held by our older, wiser self, or some of the other people that we've brought into the visualizations, like, the important relative or spiritual person who you visualize, who you communicate with. And what we do within those practices really is, it's almost like just turning a mirror. It's allowing us to speak to ourselves, because we don't speak to ourselves. We tend to do anything but speak to ourselves. One of the things I try to do when I go running is not run with headphones in, so that I can actually have a conversation with myself. Often we put headphones in because we don't want to have that conversation with ourselves. Even people go to the bathroom and take their phone in because they want to read something rather than sit in those 5 minutes with themselves. We're desperately afraid of having that time. So by taking the time for yourself to be with yourself, like you've heard me say many times, you also take the opportunity to cultivate the idea that you can take the lid off a bottle of water, and by you spending time and looking at some of these issues, you're effectively taking a stone out of the bottle of water. Just like displacement of water that we all learned in science and physics, the water level starts to drop. So why you feel the way that many of you have said you feel is because you're actually creating more space within yourselves. And that, as a result, starts to make you feel just that little bit better. So that's forgiveness. And it's hard. So I know some people have said that they haven't been able to forgive and they're struggling to forgive. The pathway to freedom is forgiveness. Think about people like Nelson Mandela and Gandhi, Mother Teresa. The principle in all of their teachings really is that freedom for yourself, freedom from oppression, is actually starting to forgive those who've harmed you, because when you sit with it, it's just yours all the time. It's not theirs. So you're left kind of holding on to that. And the last point that I'll mention, and then we can start talking on the Q&A, is the second dart. So I think there's two things that you can take away from all of this. The first one being forgiveness. If I can start to forgive myself and I can start to forgive others, and it's not even that you start to forgive, it starts to just have the capacity to notice what comes up. And when it comes up and you notice it in your meditation or you notice it after your meditation, because often your practice in the morning can cultivate a way of thinking that suddenly brings something up later in the day. So you notice it, and what you want to do is actually just go, let me just pay attention to that. Is there something within that I need to spend some time thinking about? And actually, is there a capacity in this for me to let go of what's going on with this person? That's the reflection. And then you can bring it back into your meditation the next day if you want, or you can just sit with it for a while and think about it. But forgiveness, huge, both in the person who may have harmed you and then also in ourselves. And just one really important point about the forgiveness of ourselves. We often hold on to feelings about ways that we behaved when we were younger, and we wish that we behaved differently. And when I do this work with somebody on a one-to-one basis, we go into a visualization where we actually get them to see themselves back at being 9, 11, 12, 15, whatever the age was, and to then see the person who harmed them. So it could be somebody that bullied them in school, it could be, a poor parental relationship, it could be an abuse issue, whatever that moment of harm was, and to see themselves in that situation. So one of the first realizations that people come to is, wow, I've been beating myself up about this for so long, but actually when I look back in the third person, I'm 12. So I didn't have the tools that I have today. So we beat ourselves up so much about, why didn't I do this or that when faced with that situation? Which is really easy to do when we're 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, with all of the life wisdom that we brought in. So when we see ourselves in the growth stage that we were at the point at which we had a problem, then we're actually able to consider the possibility of forgiving the person who's harmed us, even no matter how horrible the process is, but just getting to the point where you can let go of them because they're now causing you problems later on in your life. And then we find this capacity to say, you know what, I have to give up this whole idea of expecting myself to have been or behaved differently. I was 12. I can forgive my 12-year-old self. It's time to move on. So that's the concept, and that's the idea really behind it. And then the last point, and then I'll open up for you guys if you want to ask me questions on these two or anything else. But the last point is the second dart. And I spoke about this before, I think in the last masterclass, the first one. But this is the idea of, non-reactive in a situation. So this is one of the superpowers that meditation cultivates. Now, it takes time and continuation of practice. But what starts to happen within your continuation of practice is that when something happens and somebody comes at you and there's an argument, or there's, somebody says to you, oh, where are you? You're supposed to have been here by now, or, you've come home late and dinner is ready, and whatever that moment is where there's that trigger and another person has kind of come at you, that's the first dart. So it's like they throw the first dart and they throw a bit of aggression at you. And what you want to be able to start cultivating is to go, oh, okay, that's the first dart. I now have two choices. I can now throw the second dart, which is, screw you, you're wrong, I'm not talking to you anymore, and then nuclear explosion. Or, because you cultivate this idea of spaciousness and you're also developing a capacity to understand how your autonomic nervous system works, first dart comes in. First dart. You're late, dinner's ready, why aren't you home? Whatever the thing is. You notice the first dart and you think, okay, I'm going to take the sting out of this. Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to go and have a shower, get changed, then I'll come back down again, and then we'll pick it up. So by you leaving the conversation, you separate two people who are now in fight, flight, and freeze mode. So the only options they both have is they're going to fight each other. That's inevitable. And they've got to now try and combat 200,000 years of physiological development within the mind to beat it. It's nearly impossible. So instead, you have to take responsibility because you've been the person who's been working on yourself, and you can go, I know what's happening here. This is you coming at me, and all I'm going to do is come at you. So I'm going to take the space between the stimulation and the response, the space between the first dart and the second dart. So I will then move into another room, go outside, go upstairs, have a shower, do something that just separates that moment by only a few minutes. And then as two people then move away, their minds then move out of the primal space, out of the fight, flight, and freeze, and everybody goes back into their prefrontal cortex. So here we are, logic. And then when we come back in and we meet again 5 minutes later, the other person's going, oh, well, okay, I had to go. Now I'll hear really why you're late. And you're coming back in thinking, okay, I'm going to apologize because I've been late. And then it is just a sensible conversation. So two huge component parts of what we're trying to cultivate. And certainly the second one has, for me, over the last 4 or 5 years, changed the dynamic in which I try to operate. It doesn't mean that I don't get triggered, but it definitely means that I'm more able to just ride the wave and avoid what's going to happen, and then come back in again in a much more logical way. And this is something that works really, really well in a business context as well, in a negotiation. You be non-triggered. You're just noticing what people are doing, you're aware of it, and you go, I'm not going there. Then you let the breath settle, and you're all right. And as you cultivate it more and more, you don't have to leave the room, but initially, definitely leave the room. So I will open up and see if anybody wants to ask any questions, or if anybody's put anything into the chat.
Justin, I have a question from Louise. So she said, I've experienced a particular sensation towards the end of a couple of these guided meditations where it feels almost as if I'm floating. It's as if I have expanded ever so slightly outside of myself, or like a sudden burst of lightness. It's hard to describe properly. It's happened a few times towards the end of yoga nidra practice too. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on what's happening at that point.
Yeah. So, within Vipassana meditation, and one of the tools that I'll give you guys at the end of this is a Vipassana meditation process. And Vipassana tradition is, in Buddhist terms, is very much just the capacity to focus on the breath. Okay. And if anybody has ever been on a Vipassana retreat, or one of you may actually end up going on one on the back of this, when you go on a 10-day Vipassana retreat, you're assigned somebody who is like a guide for you throughout the process. And one of the important things that they will work with you on is they will help you to start to avoid the highs, the elation that you get from your meditation. So this is kind of like the bad news about this point, Louise, which is as we start to work on ourselves, and as we start to cultivate this capacity to be present and to notice what's here and to stay present, etc., we do end up at times having this kind of release where the body feels light, and we almost start to feel like we're outside the body. And we're away from where we are right now. And it's a really, really beautiful feeling. But one of the great difficulties within cultivating your practice, and within the Buddhist tradition, we call it the right meditation. And the right meditation, we use it because what we don't want to do is to have a meditation that creates an attachment or a desire that we look for when we go back into meditation. So it's kind of like the opposite end of being present and aware for whatever comes up, which can be bad stuff, but equally it can be good things, and it can be a lightness. And you would have sensed it in Yoga Nidra before as well, because Yoga Nidra is very much focused on, you know, the peaceful journey that you follow throughout that practice and the breath. So two things happen in meditation and in Yoga Nidra. And in Yoga Nidra, more so than in meditation, is that you're really bringing your breath into play. So you're oxygenating your blood at a higher level. And that can often make you just feel a little bit lightheaded. So there's a physiological part of it. There's a very emotional part of it, because you're also releasing a lot of tension and you're feeling better about yourself, which helps you feel like you're lifting up. And there's a spiritual part to it. So, you know, each person's experience is very much an individual's journey in the context of what happens to you spiritually, or not. You know, there's a lot of people who are meditators and they're you know, non-denominational or even atheist. But for others, if you have a spiritual sense, it can often bring this connection to the spirituality and bring you to this higher space where you feel that you are lighter and lifting. But the challenge is not to get attached to it, because what happens then is that you start to look for it again, and it can bring a sense of disappointment. So for me, those feelings are very rare nowadays, because my meditation practice is very much focused on being present and noticing the breath and noticing the body and allowing the mind to clear out a bit. Don't worry, it's still very busy, right? So as I always say, you know, it doesn't go away, it doesn't stop talking to you, but it's just be careful that you don't get attached to it. Enjoy it, but don't expect it to be there next time or thereafter. And if you're in Vipassana meditation on a retreat and you have a very strong Vipassana teacher, they will even be dismissive towards you and want you to move away from that as quickly as possible. I don't believe that that's the right approach. I think you should be open to whatever experience arrives, but just be careful that you don't look for it every time you try to meditate, because eventually it'll kind of go. It's like if you start to feel good about yourself when you're running or when you're exercising, and you get real highs and you lose weight and you start to notice your body changing and you feel incredible, and you know, and then you get to a point where it's like just so hard to make any more impact, and you start to lose the love out of what it is that you started to do, and then guess what, you stop running and you start putting weight on again. So meditation practice is not dissimilar. Don't get hooked on the highs. Just try and know that when they come, it's good, but when they're not here, I still do the work.
I have a question from Carl. Carl would like to ask a question.
Oh, hi there, everyone. Hi, Justin.
Hi, Carl.
A couple of things, actually. Well, first of all, the comment about the second dart. Only a short one. It's just, obviously, you know, in terms of my previous business life, involved in major contract negotiations. And the key things you do whenever there's a problem is do exactly what you said, which is, hold on, stop it. Can we have a timeout for 5 minutes? Then you come back into the room and you begin again. And it's an understanded thing. I always remember in the early 60s or 70s with the old with the unions and the government and everything else. It was always time out, guys, go outside, think about it, come back in. I tell you what, the only thing I don't understand is why in all my long life have I never realized I could use that in my personal life. But thank you for reminding me, because it's really important.
I've never said you're late for dinner.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you. I'm not pretending. But the only other thing is a really practical thing, which I wanted to, I hope the rest don't mind me asking. When you do your own meditation, how do you govern the time and how you come out of it? the reason I say this is we've looked at it because, and I really, really appreciate the 21-day thing, by the way. I really do. I sent you a note. I really mean it.
Got that. Thank you. It was beautiful.
It's just, from my perspective, I got to think to myself, I really don't want to use an egg timer or something horrible off my phone to tell me, like that wonderful bell, that I've finished. And I can't imagine, well, unless we do it separately and Christine can come around and bang something sonorous like that. Unless Beatrice does that for you, I'm not sure, Justin. But you know,
usually in my head, she likes to bang, Carl, not a bell.
But it's just literally, practically, how do I do? I want to continue this. How do I do that? I want, in other words, I don't want to come out of something in a harsh way. That's all.
Yeah, that's great. And you know, it's a perfect segue to talk about the next phase. And so a couple of things that I'll share with you guys. One of them is so for me personally, how do I do it? I always have some kind of timer involved in meditation, and principally because my practice generally every day is 30 minutes, and you know, some days I might go 45 minutes, and some days I might go longer, and I'll often like go through phases where, you know, it could be a bit longer, but my aim is try and get to 30. But today is a really good example. I had a really busy morning this morning, and I was working with somebody first thing. So I had to get an article across to somebody at 6 o'clock this morning, and then I had to dash off to do a call with a client really early. So I then had to meditate at some point throughout the day, and it's really interesting because it's great that Chrissy's beside you right now, because Chrissy's comment so important, what you said to me today, Chris, as well, and that is that for you two, you've discovered that Carl is really getting benefit out of meditation in the morning, and Chrissy gets the benefit out of the meditation in the evening because she's finished work and she finds it's a good time. When I say to everybody it's best to practice in the morning, I only say it's best to practice in the morning if you feel like it's best to practice in the morning. If you start to notice that it's actually better for you in the evening, then, you know, go with what's right for your own body and your own mind. So don't be afraid to think that just because I say it's best in the morning, you can be different. So there's fluidity within it. But so today I needed to practice. So I'm in my office, and I use generally a timer that's a YouTube bell that rings. So I'll send this into the group. So it's a Vipassana bell, and there's one that's an hour, and then there's one that's 30 minutes. And it's really simple. So let's say you're going to meditate for 15 minutes. All you do is you open it up and you move it to 15 minutes, and then you let it go. And every 5 minutes, it rings a bell, which is like me saying to you, remember, the mind will wander, bring yourself back. So the bell rings every 5 minutes, because inevitably, you know, you'll be off solving some kind of problem that you're dealing with, and you'll have forgotten that you're meditating, and your mind will be busy, and you'll be blah, blah, blah. And then you'll hear bong, and you go, oh yeah, okay, I'm supposed to be meditating. Okay, back to my breath. So it's a really, really simple tool to use. And I'm going to send you that, and then I'm going to send you a couple of other things to consider. So you can also use you can use music to meditate to as well. And YouTube is just a phenomenal resource for this. And I don't advocate apps or technology in any way. YouTube is just simple because most of us have now got a computer in our house or a laptop, so you can just jump onto YouTube, set it up, and then you don't watch it, obviously, you just have it on the background. But I'll send another one, which I actually got sent to me yesterday, which is quite good, which is 15 minutes long. And what it is this is a so Vipassana, which I mentioned earlier on, is a Buddhist approach to meditation. And then the other one that I'll send to you comes more from the Hindu lineage. And this is a sound that kind of resonates over the 15 minutes, and it kind of rises up and goes down and rises up and goes down. And then every so often you hear like a bell filtering through it. You've all probably heard this when you're in a health spa or something and you hear this kind of background music. And the reason why we use these types of sounds, and this is very similar to if anybody's ever heard of transcendental meditation, we use a kind of a nondescript sound or word, which is often called a mantra, to continuously repeat so that we don't allow ourselves to get distracted by the mind. So the variation of the sound, which is all kind of built around this kind of universal sound called Om. So it's like this Om. So these kind of guided, and nobody's speaking, it's just music play, and they allow you to sit in silence, but just to hear this one sound. And then every so often you'll hear a bell or you'll hear a variation of the sound, and it allows you to just navigate your mind. So they can be helpful too. And all of these things are generally, when you search them on YouTube, you can literally search, I want a 15-minute guided meditation, type in 15-minute guided meditation, and it'll plonk up a whole lot of stuff for you. What I try to avoid, if possible, is meditation apps. So Calm and Headspace and all these kind of things, which are, once you start Googling meditation, they'll be advertising the hell out of you whenever you're searching stuff. I have received clients on a one-to-one basis who have extreme anxiety and stress, and they turn up and go, I don't know what's wrong because I'm meditating on this, app, and it's not helping me. And I say, okay, so how are you getting on with that? Well, I can tell you now, I've been meditating for 727 days. I've received 87 trophies. It says that I'm more likely to meditate than most people in my group. And I find this thing extraordinary. I mean, incredible that the guys have made huge amounts of money out of this. But I had one client who I worked with recently, and actually he's a testimonial on my website. So Jan is somebody who speaks on a testimonial on my homepage. When Jan came to work with me for the very first time, he flew over to Ireland, and we were meeting that morning, and he was on a run before we came to meet. And then when he came to the meeting, we're talking about what's going on with his mind and his busy mind, his anxiety and stress, and he was signed off work for 6 months at this stage. And I asked him about his app. He told me that it actually sends him a reminder throughout the day telling him to get ready to meditate. And these kind of electronic reminders are the same as the ping of our emails, the ping of our text messages. And the phone is often the center of our stress. So to have it then as the place where you're supposed to go as this bastion to find your peace is highly illogical. So I try to avoid apps. Does that help? Great. So I'll share a couple of things that I use, but then by all means feel free to go and look. Oh, and one of the things I was going to suggest to the group, if you want, I have got more. I don't know how many more. I have got a few more recordings of guided meditations. So over those meditations that you've all heard were part of meditations that we did over 8 weeks during the COVID lockdown. I recorded some more, and what I might do is I'll post them up on the website, and there might be another 7 or 8. So there'll be some more options. The difference is that they might be a bit more kind of higgledy-piggledy. The way that I designed the 21 days was to very much take you from a breathing exercise through various different kind of gates along the way to the point where, as somebody said in one of their messages, oh, I noticed that we're now starting to move towards silence, and it makes me feel like this is like I'm being readied and prepared to be sent out into the big bad world. So some of the meditations that I drop in may fit into different points within our journey together. But I'll put them on the website. I'll share an email with you guys. I'll try and get them up tomorrow or Friday, and I'll let you know how many there are. So you've got more options. But also, don't be afraid to go back and reuse some of the meditations as well, because you can often find different experiences. And I know for some people who were actually on the live meditations at the start and then have come onto this challenge, they've sat through the same meditation twice, and they've had different observations the second time. So don't be afraid to kind of revisit.
Justin, I have two questions. So the first one is another one from Louise. She said, during some of the meditations, I've also experienced quite a strong muscle twitch, either in my leg or my hand. Wondering, is this common too?
Yeah, it is. So one of the things I often find, my hands and my fingers are places that I can find. Sometimes I even feel like tingling and sensation in my fingers as you kind of hold certain body parts in place. So that's not uncommon, especially in your fingers. If you are noticing repetition in the context of a part of the body that's kind of appearing each time, one of the things that can become interesting is to just then take that part of the body and then think, what happens here when I feel tension, when I feel anxiety, when I feel stress? It can often be a very good indicator from our bodies to draw our attention to a point where we are tightening and loosening and tightening and loosening. And it can start to teach you that if that part of the body is becoming more noticeable within your meditation, then maybe consider noticing that part of the body more outside of your meditation. So it might be a very good indicator to notice, I'm obviously stressed here. I didn't notice that before. So for me, the jaw was always a real revelation when I started to notice that I actually get tightness in my jaw when I'm stressed, or people are making me feel uneasy or unpleasant. And that we can often be in those emotional places that are negative to ourselves, and we don't notice it cognitively and emotionally because we've built up this capacity to just shove it down into the bottle and screw the lid on. So use the body as a guide to go, so when I'm actually with this person, that twitch or that issue in that part of my body is also there. And it can be a very good way of the body communicating to you to say, pay attention. Sometimes it can be, okay, so the person that I'm spending time with, I'm starting to notice that they're a particularly bad negative influence on my life. They don't make me feel good about myself. So the twitch can often be the start to make you think about the relationship. And one of the best things that, again, you can do as you move through this awareness is to start to then notice, where are the toxic relationships in your life? Where are the toxic people who bring you down? I mean, we've just the immense capacity as human beings to tolerate so many people in our lives that do us harm. And I can tell you, I just don't, because life's too short. I'm all about giving whatever I can to others, but there must be this kind of reciprocity. There must be this give and take relationship. So the physical tension in the body can sometimes be a very good indicator to just notice what else goes on during the day when that happens.
So we have one question from Trish. Trish, would you like me to read it out, or would you like to read it or say it out yourself? I don't know if Trish is there. Maybe I'll read it out for her. Trish said, when you focus on the heart and become more heart-centered, does this require honesty for the heart to remain open? By this, I mean honesty and trust. Do they make the heart sensation more present, accessible? And the converse, if your trust is damaged, does this impact on the heart mean flight, fright, freeze takes over? It's all connected. Sorry, I hope I read that out correctly.
Yes, it's interesting. There's a lady who's been on the journey with us, and I don't know. I can't see everybody who's on here. I don't know if Sandra is on. She's in LA, so she's probably out sunning herself at the moment. But she's a cardiologist, and she sent a really interesting comment today where she said, it's really helped me, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's really helped me with myself, this whole journey. But actually, I now have a much greater compassion towards my patients, because I now am getting a sense of heartfulness. And if you remember, I said to you that mindfulness is a translation that some people don't like, because they believe that a more literal translation from the Sanskrit is heartfulness. So the time that we've spent and focused on the heart is so important, because this is where we truly kind of tap into our own emotions. And in the context of what Trish is asking, where we have been hurt in the past, and where we have lost trust for ourselves, or maybe trust for other people, you have two choices with that. You either continue to sit with it, and it's with you for as long as you want to hold on to it, or you start to bring this whole idea of forgiveness to the table and letting go. If you haven't read the book, you must read the book called Into the Magic Shop by Dr. What's his name again?
James Doty.
Dr. James Doty. Because this really goes quite into some depth around the whole idea of visualization as well. But you can, in your meditation, actually call forth the person who has been the aggressor and visualize them, see them in front of you, notice them, notice how you feel, and then actually find forgiveness. And when I do this on a one-to-one with people, we actually go through a visualization process where, first of all, you take out your anger on them with your eyes closed and just in your own mind. So you let them know how you felt about them being, a total whatever. And so you release the anger. And then once the anger has been released, we then go through a process where you then start to find forgiveness. And you then put your arms around them, forgive them, and let them go. And it's kind of counterintuitive, but when I did this practice myself first in my own therapy 6 years ago, I forgave some people that I thought I'd never really be able to forgive. But I couldn't believe how much lighter I started to feel once I did that. Because as much as I was still angry at them, they probably didn't even notice, and they were off living their own lives. So I was the person left carrying the pain. So Trish, it's challenging, but where you've had people betray you and the trust has been broken and you find it harder to connect to the heart, therein lies the real struggle, which is go and push through that and see, can you find the capacity to actually just say, you know what, I need to let go of that person. I need to forgive them. And, it might be even situations where, you have, let's say you have a challenging relationship with your mother. Not for 1 minute suggesting that I might have had a challenging relationship with my mother, but if these people are still in your life, and they're not somebody that you can say, well, that person's toxic, I just need to cut them out. There are certain people who you just have to have in your life. So they may be the father of your kids who you're not there, or an ex-partner or an ex-wife. So they're still in your life and you can't really avoid them, but you want to get to the point where they're not just constantly triggering you and putting you into that fight, flight, and freeze every time they arrive. if you find the capacity to actually let go and forgive and do it with yourself on your own, you don't need them involved, you can change the nature of the relationship. So even like, you know, if it's a mother or a father, and, you know, if it was my mother who's 85 years of age, it's kind of pointless for me to go and have a conversation with her now and tell her how abhorrent I think her behavior was when I was 14, because, you know, really, is it relevant? I'm 45, she's 85. So it's easier if I actually just come to terms with it myself and let go of it. And that way then I can engage with her on an easier level. And I don't need to have that conversation with her. So often we're like dying to have these conversations where we just want to like let it go and just really tell somebody exactly how we think. And they may not have ever noticed that they've even done something to you. So often it just creates a problem. So sometimes forgiveness is just the process that we do with ourselves on our own. We let go of those feelings and we just start to notice how we move through it. And after you've done it, you then go back to your meditation and you just take time, because, you know, it is like a wound that you open. When the wound is open, then you go back and you nurture yourself through your meditation, through your practice, and you just start to notice that it becomes that much easier.
Trisha's audio is not working, and she said that meditation at 19 shifted a lot for her, so that worked. Leslie, you had a question. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Beatrice, and hi, Justin. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Hi, Leslie.
I just want to say huge thank you. I will send a nice testimonial. Like, I want to take some time on it. As you know, I've been with you since COVID, that dreaded time, and just a little background for everybody. And Justin may recall that I lost my granddaughter, Georgie, so I'm starting already 7 months ago, and I have found these meditations so wonderful. And I did have a question, which was that you alluded it to earlier about emotion and welling up with things when you're going to meditation. And naturally, over the last, almost every couple of days, when I have a meditation, Georgie's name will come into my little face will come in there, and I can't stop the tears, they flow. So what I've been doing is, and I want to know this is a yes or no, because I know you haven't got much time, is I've chosen to just let that go, not try and hold my hand and bring myself back to the focus. I've just continued with that, let it go for a few seconds, and then go back to the focus rather than stop the crying. Is that the right thing to do?
Absolutely 100% correct. So how did I end up in finding meditation? Well, because, as you know, Leslie, we lost Joshua, just like you guys lost Georgie. And the difference between myself and Beatrice at that point, after we lost Joshua, we came back to live in Ireland. And I kind of thought I'd grieved. And we came back, we got a golden retriever, and I watched Beatrice for, I don't know, the next 6 months going out walking in the mountains with our golden retriever and being on ourselves with our golden retriever and going on very long hikes. And I went off and set up another business. And I thought, it's fine. I've come through that now. I just need to plow on and get going. And, grief is like the biggest stone that we can try and shove into this bottle. And it really, really does not go away. And grief is such an important process within our own species, because, we have a very deep attachment to those people, especially in our immediate family. And of course, it's so counterintuitive to lose a child. And that just has a whole different impact on the way that we try and approach things. And very tragically in my family, I lost my nephew, who was 18 months old, 19 years ago. And I watched how that tore apart so much of my sister and her own sense of self, and it took her time to heal and recover from that. And she's an incredible human being who did just do that and come through it. But what I watched with Beatrice was just a connection into the emotion and time to spend with herself. And then I ignored it, but then I had to go back and deal with it. So if you don't allow the crying to come out, Leslie, you're keeping it inside. And then the keeping it inside is just a volcano. And I know, when it comes to other people who are impacted by the loss of Georgie as well, it's very difficult to guide people on this path, and the same for all of us when we have friends and family who grieve, because really everybody needs to find their own way there. And one of the most important sayings within Buddhism and Buddhist psychology is, when the student is ready, then so too is the teacher, and there's no point in trying to change it. So I think you're doing everything exactly as you should, and we've exchanged messages over the last few months, which I've really enjoyed, and I think just honor the memory, feel happy to connect into it. And also, I often at times go and bring myself to the point where I'm going to cry. So there's times when I'll actually want to go back into that memory of Joshua, and I'll play music that will just bring me to the point where I'll be teary and I'll be upset, because I know I just need to kind of open the valve a little bit every now and then. I don't know, Beatrice, what you may have something more to add to that, but I think you're doing a great job, Leslie. I really do.
Justin, thanks, Beatrice. Your nourished bowl.
Yes.
Keeping me alive.
I think we had Christine has a question.
Yeah, sorry, I realise we're right on time. So please feel free to say you can deal with it offline if you want.
That's okay. I said 8:30 because I'm desperately trying to be on time, right? Two people in our relationship, Beatrice is really time focused, and it comes with being German. I'm not, right? I've got to do an interview at 9 o'clock. So, in true style, I'll probably just be like 1 minute to 9 and I'll start that. So don't worry about it. Please ask questions.
I will be brief, but I wrote on the timeline after my 21st meditation was that I had a really extraordinary experience twice now when I met my future self. And I have done this before in other work that I've done, and I've never had that experience. And the one I had tonight was just so emotional that I was in tears, because my older self was so kind to me. And I just was curious whether this is something other people would recognize, or that emotional response, was that a good thing? Was that something I should be more concerned about? I just really have never experienced that before. And that was just a question I have for you. This need for my older self to hug me and take care of me, it was really peculiar. So I just wanted to ask you, Justin, if that's something that you would recognize, or maybe if anyone else in the group has experienced that.
Yeah. So I'll put it to anybody else as well who'd like to comment. But when I talk about forgiveness, and I talk about sometimes we have to be able to look back at ourselves as 9-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 28-year-olds. The passage of time brings great wisdom, and when we use the idea of connecting to the older, wiser version of you, it's that connection where that older, wiser you is kind of going, well, so you screwed up, right? And guess what? That's what we do. That's human nature. But in the end, it's okay. So don't worry about it. You're going to be okay. You're going to be fine. And it almost leads right back to that very first or second meditation where I talk about being your own leader. It's cultivating that idea within ourselves that, you know what, you're going to be okay. I love that expression, which is, you know, in the end, everything will be okay. And if it isn't, then it just isn't the end yet. And that's what that older, wiser self is there to say, you know, just keep going. You're going to be fine. Everything will work out. And it always does. You know, you think about all of the challenges that we've been through. And one of the things I ask you to do in one of the previous meditations is to bring up this idea of a time when you had great resilience. And we do that in the lead up to that last older, wiser you, because you start to notice that you have this capacity to deal with way more than we ever give ourselves credit for. And the holding of yourself by the older, wiser you is you connecting into this capacity that, you know, I can be here for myself. You know, I don't, you know, the expression that people always use, oh, here's my other half, you know, this person completes me. I want to cultivate this idea that I am a whole on my own. And you know, the whole idea of holiness, it comes from the root of the word is wholeness. So a holy man is whole in the context of himself, or a holy woman is holy. It's that sense of I am one unit. You know, it's nice if I have somebody who complements me, but I don't need anybody else to complete me. I can do that by myself.
No, that's lovely. Thank you very much, Justin. And it was
Pleasure.
a great experience, but very emotional.
It's good. It's good, and it's, you know, it's nice to just enjoy it. And like many people have said throughout some of their experiences, you know, when the tears come or you feel that emotion, just sit with it. You know, allow it to pass through you. It's there for a reason, so it's worth noticing.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
I have no other questions.
I have one here, sorry.
JK is going to go on there.
Yeah, I missed mine this morning, unfortunately, because we had a little bit of a crisis. My daughter is a bit stressed out. She's pregnant again, and she got a young son, and they're all working from home. So we had to basically kind of scatter and make sure we looked after them. So I'm actually feeling now when I miss one like that, because I'm just too busy. I have to go into work. I'm in work now at the moment. I just couldn't do it. It made me more anxious. Obviously, I'm in the middle of something depression-wise, but it's getting better, thankfully. But I missed it this morning, and I think I'm up to 14 now. So but it certainly has helped me, and I'll pick it up now tomorrow morning, thankfully. But it can get in the way sometimes. Life can. So I just missed it this morning, which is a pity, and it did make me feel a bit of anxiousness towards the afternoon when I didn't get around to it this morning, you know. So when the 21 days is over, then you're suggesting then that we kind of move into different spheres or something that you might actually put up online yourself for us?
Yeah. So what I'll do is I will so I have a bunch of other guided meditations. I don't know how many they are from a few weeks ago that I'm going to put up. So I'll put them on the same webpage on my website, so you can find them there. And then I'll circulate an email where I'll actually give you some links to some YouTube resources that you can then use. And I might actually put a couple of podcasts up there as well that I like that are handy to use. One of the things that I do, JK, and in my own practice, if I miss a meditation and I kind of get towards the end of the day and I haven't actually done it, I'll often just take like 5 minutes or 3 minutes, and I'll just designate that as a time to just sit somewhere quietly, close my eyes, and just, you know, set a timer on my phone or my watch or whatever, and just have a countdown for 5 minutes to 3 minutes, so that you still just give yourself that little, you know, nugget of time, and you still kind of, you know, put a box, but don't overexert yourself when you kind of miss a session. You know, I often say to people that meditation is not a competitive sport. So we don't want to bring this sense of competition that I must do it this way at a certain time. You know, I think habit's important and it's really helpful, but if you miss it, then just go, well, you know what, I can go a bit easier on myself. Instead of, you know, sitting through 25 minutes, I'll just take 3 minutes, and it might be just to focus on the breathing, and that's all. So be compassionate to yourself. But, you know, well done. I'm glad that, you know, things are improving for you. And I'll have some resources up tomorrow so that you guys will still have stuff to go to and to evolve. And anyway, for all of you who've been through this, you know, as you find those kind of resources that I send out, and if you struggle with them and if you want to find something different, just circle back. I have tons of resources and so much information that I've built up that I can then circulate some other things that might be beneficial for you. And Google and YouTube are great. You know, one thing with meditation is, particularly if you go for more guided meditations, you just need to find a voice that you like. You know, it's just a voice that's calming. You know, it's non-egotistical. It's just guiding you, and it's bringing you through a journey. And it's not drawing you in any particular way. So you can often go through guided meditations and just hear a voice and you go, I don't like that accent, or I don't like the sound of that voice, or whatever. So you just need to find a guide who is just in the background. It's just a place that you can feel comfortable with.
I do have, when I started all this process, I did have a certain amount of cynicism that I have as a journalist about where is this going, you know, how does this process work, whatever, you know. And I'm still, having said that, working through that too, about saying, okay, where is this going? How is this helping? You know, she's just talking nonsense here. This is not going to go anywhere. But I have found myself that I've gone through, as the process goes, with particularly with reading and bringing my mind back from the wandering mind to concentrating on your voice and to concentrate on what you're suggesting we do. I find it very helpful in this way.
I think a heavy sense of cynicism is well advised when you start to, you know, Google and find other people's guided meditations. I don't really, you know, you'll find a lot of people who will have, you know, lights shining through your head and you know, there's lots of different things that can be brought in. I like to keep it very practical because it just gives you a sense of, you know what, I could do this on a train, on a plane. I could do it before I go into a meeting.
Yeah, that's what I like about it. I like the simplicity of it. That's what's actually has, you know, because it's not complicated. And I like the fact that the simplicity of it means you can do it simply. Like I'm sitting in a chair here. When I finish all this, I'll give myself that 3 to 5 minutes before I crack on to work, you know, so.
Yeah,
I like the simplicity of it.
One of my oldest clients is an atheist, you know, so he started this by going, I don't really believe that there's any spiritual sense to this. And I said, well, why do you have to have a spiritual sense to it? Why don't you just believe that it's a journey, you know, and I'm just going to connect to myself, and the practice is like life, you know. It's like, you know, yesterday you had time to do it because you had time in your day, and that day was easier. And then today, you know, a family issue comes up and you, of course, as a father, go and help your daughter. So, you know, some days meditation's easier than others. It raises challenges. It brings us to a different sense of an emotion. And it's just always the journey. You know, that's really, it's often when we start to realize that life actually is a journey. It's not a destination. You know, so much of our anxieties come out of the destination. You know, I need to get my hand on that trophy, whatever it is I think I need to find in life to complete myself, and more about when I just try and get through today, this moment, without constantly looking to the future. I start to realize that actually the journey is quite nice. Journey's not bad. I like the journey.
Okay, we have a quick question from Ken.
Yeah, I've been using Headspace for 3 years, Justin. So, and yes, I've had lights shine down through my head. But to follow on from JK's,
you're gonna take out your Headspace trophy now.
Yeah, hang on. No, that's it there. No, no, seriously. Okay, so there's a couple of things. I maybe like JK in the beginning, I was a little bit doubtful, but I knew I needed to do something. And I heard Andy, who is the guy that's made the money out of Headspace, being interviewed, and that led me to him. So one thing, and one of the reasons why I started to sit with you on the lives and then through the 21 days is because I want to try and find a way to be able to do it like you've just described, where a simple bell, and I think, and I was kind of using Andy as accountability, a bit like John saying he missed this morning. That's I had those times as well because my business is similar. And it was just trying to find, I was using it for accountability, really. I wasn't really counting the days because it never worked. I'd hit 16 days and then I'd lose it, and, you know. But I find I kind of like Andy's voice, actually. I kind of like Andy. I think he's a good guy, but I can kind of see where you're going with it. But yes, certainly this has helped me to, I suppose, as you said, it's a journey. And this is just another, if you like, I've got into a different car for a while and gone a little bit further down the road with the journey. That's not to say I won't use Andy from time to time. I actually find some of his sleepscapes very good when I'm traveling and I'm on the road and I'm in hotel rooms and I can't get to sleep. I actually find them quite useful to help me to nod off. So I won't throw them out yet, but I am thankful for the opportunity to climb into another car and travel along the road a little bit further and see where I'm going. I'm also atheist, by the way. So yeah, it is a journey. It is a journey. Thank you.
I think, look, with Headspace as an app, look, it's phenomenal, and there is, you know, we have kind of got within the mindfulness community, you know, we have kind of got like mindfulness kind of Nazis, right? Who are like, you know, you must meditate in this exact way in complete silence. You know, who even wouldn't even like a bell, right? And I've written an article about this that I'm gonna publish on my website, which is talking about this whole idea of what's called mindfulness, right? So the commoditization of mindfulness. And I firmly stand in the camp of it's good, because if Headspace brings you to the point where you find the right path that works really well for you, well, then it's fantastic, you know. And even the guy Jan, who I said is the testimonial on my website, you know, he only ended up with me because he'd spent, you know, whatever 736 days and got his trophies with Headspace. So I often will say inside our meditations, don't get attached. You know, we're not looking for attachment. We're not looking for outcome. And that's just where Headspace goes wrong. And of course, look, what Andy set up, and Andy was a very, very good human being who set it up. But now there are, you know, huge amounts of you know, tens of millions of dollars invested in Headspace. And they're using slot machine technology to keep you hooked. And that's all. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying always be careful that you don't get attached to something, because then it's not you that's trying to find the sense of oneness and understanding of yourself. It's the attachment to the app.
Yeah, sorry, just to finish off. Yeah, there's a lot of truth in what you say there, and that's kind of why I wanted to look elsewhere, and just try, as you said, travel down the road a little bit further with somebody else for a while, and try and find my own way. So, and I'm working very hard to reduce, for all sorts of different reasons. But yeah, and thanks again.
Pleasure. Thanks, Ken.
No other questions at the moment. So I think maybe it's time to wrap it up, Justin, because I know you've got another appointment there.
But really, for me, from the bottom of my heart, I've really enjoyed this. You know, I know at times I've been behind getting back to to everybody's responses, but I didn't want to just, you know, kind of carpet bomb, what a horrible expression to use when you're trying to describe a meditation group, a response to everybody's feedback. I really wanted to read it and sit with it and hear you and then respond. So sometimes I fall behind, but I found it really rewarding. I learned a lot too. And you know, there's no interaction in my life that I don't learn from. So I really appreciate everything that everybody has shared. Kind of candor and willingness to be open as a group was phenomenal. And tomorrow I'll get on and upload some more of those meditations, and I'll circulate some stuff for you guys as well. So there'll be something there for you tomorrow to keep going. And don't be afraid to double back and reuse some of them too. All right, finished?
Yep.
Yay. And on time as well. Well, nearly on time.
Thank you very much. Thanks all.
Thanks everybody. Appreciate it. You can unmute yourself and say goodbye.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye.
Bye, and thanks a million.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks so much. It's been great.
Bye. Have a nice evening. Bye bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Cheerio. Cheerio.
Bye.
Thanks again. Bye bye.